Welcome to Headlines. This is David Lichtenstein here in the Yeshiva Shalmaila. This week we have a very interesting topic, dating, I guess an entry to marriage and halacha. We will have the great Dayan and Posek from Detroit, the great Rabbi Aharon Sorscher, certainly one of the biggest Talmidei Chachamim in America. He will answer many halachic shilas. An example of halachic shilas: going to a bar, drinking in a bar on a date, a lounge. Yichud, is there a problem of Yichud? Driving in remote areas, hiking in a remote area. What about Balei Tshuva? The Shulchan Aruch in Even HaEzer Dal talks about a Ben Nida. Well, if you marry a Bal or a Balas Tshuva, is there a problem of Ben Nida? A younger sibling marrying before an older sibling. What are the halachic issues? Showing pictures. What is the halacha shkafa about that? Yichus. Bas Talmud Chacham. The Gemara says, "Leilam Yisadim Bitay Benoy Leben Talmud Chacham." Either way, so he says, "What's the law? You have a choice. You can have somebody who wants to support you, or maybe she was number 1 in her, or 2, or 10 in her class, versus a Bas Talmud Chacham." Yichus. How important is it? Should you be marrying a spouse firmer than yourself? Marry up. Do you want to marry a mashkiach? Lying about your past. How much do you have to disclose? A lot of people feel, I have to be honest about everything. Like, what is it important to be honest about? What is it important to be honest about? What don't you have to disclose? Do you have to disclose, many different things? That you went to a movie, that you had a boyfriend, a girlfriend. Is there a difference between a boy or a girl who had a past? Is there a double standard, or do we say no? Each one is the same. These and many other halachic and hashkafic shilos. We will also have Rabbi Yoel Asher Labin, Rav in Tom's River, a Chassidish Rav. He's a Talmud of Satma and many other great Chassidish yeshivas. And he will be speaking about one date and you're out. The show, is that the right way to go in our generation? And if you have to do it, because that's what's expected of you, how to do it effectively? Because this is an interview that you're going to making a decision for somebody you're going to work with the rest of your life, and we know how fraught and the interview process. How one interview doesn't usually do it. He's going to say, is it correct? And this is interesting. He's coming on the tail of a Shabbos that he just hosted 300 Hasidim, all of whom are divorced. So we are seeing a lot higher divorce rate in the Hasidic community. And one of the topics we'll be discussing is it Hasidim is one day, then you're out. By the Litvaks, it's 8. Rav Shach said, and famous Koizenberger Rebbe said, Katzti b'chai b'bnois ches. He was against 8. And then you have, the more modern Orthodox, that could be, 10, 20, 30, I don't know what it is. Who has the best statistics? We will have Rabbi Benzion Shafier of the Shmooze, one of the most listened to Torah programs in the world. I think he gets an average of 10,000 for everyone. And very popular Mechanech, Rav, speaker. We'll hear what he has to say about these topics. And this will be a 2-part series. In the next part, we will have Rabbanis Friedman, the famous Chabadska Mashpia Shliach speaker. And we will have a number of other Rabbanim speaking about this topic as well. But would have been too long to all do in one shot. And I do want to say that marriage is one of the most difficult things. I mean, I was talking with my wife, who's a relationship coach. I was walking with her last night. I said, what percentage of marriages are happy? And she said, I don't know, but my guess would be 25%, which I find to be really frightening, because for Niyaz Daiti, I think that it could be much higher than that. I remember my father, Zochran Levracha, once said, it says this week's parsha, it says, Avram saw Ayil Achar Nechaz B'Svach. He saw entangled in the brambles. Remember, a beautiful aisle, and the brambles means he had to take a machete, cut his way through there to take the aisle out. So the question is, why did it have to be Nechaz B'Svach? I mean, couldn't Hashem made it a little bit easier for Avraham? So my father, Zechariah Levracha, said over from one of the tzaddikim, one of the holy masters, I don't know who it was, he said, Avram was worried, maybe this aisle is coming from the Sitra Achra. It's from not a good place. He should feel, finished, no more arcade, I was yaitzu with the aisle. Maybe it was just sort of an excuse. So he said, it had to be Nechaz B'Svach. It had to be entangled in the thicket. It was difficult to take out. If it's something difficult, that means it's not coming. If it's not easy, it's not coming from the Sitra. It's coming from some place that if you had to earn it, then it's coming from a good place. And I would say the same thing about marriage. The easy Hollywood marriage. We've all seen those, those TV show movie. They fall in love. He was the quarterback. She was the best looking. 90% of Hollywood marriages fail. I don't know, is it 99%? It's something. It's north of it. 90%. I'll bet you $1 on that. So, if happiness, yes. If the marriage is difficult, that's a good sign. If you have to work at it, that's a good sign. That's not a bad sign. That means it's coming from someplace holy. So before we start, I want to talk for a minute about marriage. And I want to ask Mechilas from our Avis HaKadoshim, or any listener who's offended by what I'm about to say. And all of you who want to call and scream, I ask you Mechila in advance. But what brought up that there's one type of marriage. The subservient wife. That's the way we're taught in seminary in Chava and by BJJ and in the Mir and in Brisk, etc. That's how we're taught. Maybe in YU too. I don't know. So we have also one picture, like the wife baking challahs and lighting candles and running out. We have sort of our simple, maybe the American view. There's one type of marriage, whatever it may be. But if you look at these parshas, it's really very fascinating. You see the Torah, and there's a Maisa Avis here that I think I've never seen this discussed, and I think it's fascinating. Let's look at the marriage of Avram and Sarah, if we can, but at least according to the way the Chazal show it to us. And we'll see that marriages are not cookie cutter, right? They're certainly not. They're very different. What happens to Avram and Sarah? Avram, they don't have children. So Sarah tells to Avram, take my shifcha, Hagar, and take her as your wife, or as a concubine, your mate. And you'll have children through her. Now, a lot of husbands would say, thank you for the idea, but, really, I'm not interested in marrying. First, I'm married to you. Let's, we'll go to another fertility specialist, or we won't. And on top of that, marrying your maid is not exactly, stepping up over here. If I really wanted to, I would go out onto Match.com or Frumster or JDate and find somebody, or call the local shadchan. I would call Freddie Friedman, or P.D. Roth, and they'll find me somebody, right? But he doesn't do that. He listens to her. He follows what she says. What happens then? This maid, who now Hagar is now his spouse or his mate, and they're living together. And what happens? And she's not behaving well. And Sarah feels demeaned. So Sarah comes back. She says, I changed my mind. This woman you've been living with you for a few years, your new mate? Yeah, get rid of her. What do you mean get rid of her? I have emotions. I'm a person. And not only that, Avram is the chesed of the Bria. You know what it is from Avram to get Avram? She said, Avram said, okay, you want me to get rid of her? I get rid of her. Then she comes back. So Sarah says, take her back. I changed my mind. Start a relationship again. He says, okay, I'm starting it again. Then they have a child. And what happens? Sarah doesn't like Ishmael. So she says, listen, I want you to throw your mate and now your child, and it's the only child you have in the world. Well, it's not. It's one of two children you have in the world. One of two children into the street. Arise. No more. Out. And what does Avram say? Like a lemela. He says, okay. And Rabbi Shalom says to Avram, and it says it caused Avram great stress. Right? It was very distressed. And Avram said to him, Kol ma sh'omer lecha Sarah shma b'koila. Sarah is greater than you in Nevuah. So it's interesting. This doesn't seem like the typical cookie-cutter marriage. The macho man, blah, 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 the way we're taught in, yeshiva, this or that. And why is that? Maybe Avram needed a different type of marriage. Avram is the chesed of Bria. When you think of Avram, we think of orchim, we think of soup kitchens, we think of homeless shelters, Bikur Chaylim houses, mispal for his worst enemies, for Sodom. He's a tzaddik. He can't say no. Well, you know what? Maybe he needs a wife who knows how to say no. This is not, I don't like the way he's behaving. Out, out. Somebody in the family has to say no. And from everything the Torah says, it seems to work. Their marriage worked. It wasn't cookie cutter. It was different. But for them, it was. Let me ask you something. If you're one of my male listeners, which is the nicest tie in your closet? Or which is the nicest color shoes if you're a woman? Is it the brown, the blue, or the black? So an intelligent person is going to say, well, it depends It depends which suit I'm wearing, or it depends. There's no nicest tie. There's no nicest pair of shoes. If I'm wearing a black dress, it's black. If it's a blue, it's a. What does it mean? Which is the nicest pair of shoes? Which is the best piece in the puzzle box? Which is the best puzzle piece? That's what when somebody says, let's look for a cookie cutter marriage. So if your marriage, as is mine, is not cookie cutter, well, guess what? Let's go to Yitzchak Avinu. Yitzchak, on the other hand, is the din of the Bria. Yitzchak is Midas Hadin, right? He is, and what does din mean? Independence. A person whose din means I am what I earn. I don't want any chasadim. I don't want any toivis. Nothing garnished. What I have, what I earned, this is mine. Shali, shali, shalach, shalach. That's the din of the Bria, right? How do you find the shidduch for the din of the Bria? This is not somebody who's gonna. Avram is by Yitzchak. The rule is Yikoiv Hadin Esahar. The din rules. No rachmim, no chesed, nothing. This is not. He doesn't need a wife who's going to argue with him. This is the most independent. Din means I'm totally independent. And here's something interesting about Yitzchak. Yitzchak and Gemalim, more Gemalim around Yitzchak. But Yigamel Yitzchak, but Avram made a suda b'yayim Yigamel as Yitzchak. What does it mean Yigamel? And then Rivka with the Gemalim. The Gamel is the only creature in the universe. It could go 60 days, something like that, without water. Totally self-sufficient. It doesn't need anybody or anything. Gamel Yitzchak Benai. This is the most independent person who will ever live. And when Eliezer goes to find the shidduch for Yitzchak, he says, I don't need a wife who's going to disagree with him, agree with him, help. This is not somebody who needs like a wife to debate. He knows exactly what he wants. I need a girl who knows how to feed a camel. It's not easy to feed a camel, something that never needs to drink. How do you feed it? And that was Rivka. Rivka was the girl who could feed the camels. What does that mean? She sees Yitzchak for the first time. What does it say? Vatipol me'al hagamel. She fell in pachad. This is not Sarah who's telling Avram what to do. Vatipol, vatischas, and she covers herself up. She was terrified. She never once disagrees with him in the whole Torah. When she has a question on him, she goes to Shem ve'ever. She then, when she disagrees with him, she does it with all kinds of armimias. She tells Yaakov, dress up. She says her husband's making the biggest mistake in the history. To pick Esav over Yaakov, it will go down as the biggest single error man has ever made. Does she say to her husband, excuse me, Rabbi Yitzchak, let's have a discussion? No, it's not, because she knows with din. So what is she? She's the subservient wife. And she knows by her Isa, she's the Isa at Tzayim Baila, the typical, the more, and when she doesn't, she figures out a way. It's a different type of marriage. Right? You know, my father, I think he told it to me. He said, why does it say Vatipol me'al hagamel? He said, B'derech tzachas, it's something you could share by the Shabbos table. He said, Avram was Masakin Shachris. Right? There was no other tefillah. It says by Yitzchak, when Rivka came, he was being mispal mincha, was L'snai Erev. She said she saw him davening by mincha time. She never knew there was him. He's davening Shachris till 8 o'clock at night. Such a Vatipol me'al hagamel. She chalished. Her husband who davens for 12 hours a day. Okay, that's B'derech tzachas. Now let's go to Yaakov. What was Yaakov's marriage like? Well, let's look with Leah. Ra Hashem ba'ani, ki shama Hashem ki snua anoichi, apami love ishi. I mean, this is a real struggle. This is not some made-in-heaven marriage, right? And with Rachel, she yells at him, give me children, ayin meis anoichi. He yells back at her, vayichar af Yaakov Rachel. This is already two people debating. This is like, you know, some people would say a modern marriage, like a brother and a sister, like equal footing. So we have three totally different paradigms of marriage, right? Avram and Sarah certainly seem that she made the decisions in the house, right? Yitzchak and Rivka, Yitzchak Midas Hadin, she never opened her mouth. Yaakov and Rachel and Leah, constant back and forth discussion, argument, etc. A much more of a, what would you say, maybe a more modern marriage? I don't know which one is. But one thing's for sure, there is no cookie cutter marriage. So if your marriage, or if you're dating and you say, you know, maybe I'm the type of girl who doesn't fit in exactly into the thing, you know what? You have a good ma'aseh avos, simin labanim. Let's go to our riddle of the week. Yorotz l'krasa mi Pesach oil. Avram Avinu was the great machzor Sairach. Torah's Myrach, everything he did. And the Chafetz Chaim, let's say in Havas Chesed Chel Gimel, he talks about the mile of Chesed, and to learn from Avram Avinu, Ma'aseh Avos similar Labanim. So here's the question: there was no Kiyum Mitzvah at all. They were Malachim. Malachim don't eat. The whole thing, Avram was being fooled, right? The whole mitzvah of Chesed is bein Adam l'Chaverei. So here's my question. The halacha is, the Gemara Motzei in Baba Basra and Daf Testament Beis brings the story of Yirmiyah, who was Makal Anshe and Asais. And he said to them, Yirmiyah, he said, you should always be nirshal to do mitzvahs for people who are einay mehuganim, and you're not going to be makabel schar. If you do a mitzvah to a Russia, the Gemara Baba Kama to Zion and Beis says you're not makabel schar. Because the mitzvah is to be meitiv l'chaverei. If the person is not chaverei b'mitzvahs, you're not. If it's a Russia today, it wouldn't be a Tinnik Shenishber, etc. You're not mekayim the mitzvah. The Raman Baba Basra and Testament Beis that he says it has to be an Adam Hagun to do tzedakah for. If you're doing it for an Adam She'enei Hagun, you're not doing it. And Noida B'Yehuda, to have a scene in Yud brings, he says Ikka mitzvah tzedakah. That's a mitzvah bein Adam l'chaverei. He says Kol kiyum ha-mitzvah lesa ela im yesh beka. Another thing, he says there has to be a real taiva to the chaverei. Not only does it have to be anashim hagunim, but it has to be somebody who there's a taiva. So here the question is, by the malachim, there was no taiva. It was a joke. They ate it. It didn't get digested. It was like feeding a robot. So how do we learn from Avram Avinu mitzvah of gemilas chasadim avachnasas archim, when the whole mitzvah, according to halacha, he wasn't even mekayim and he didn't get schar for? That's question number one. Question number two, and this is a question from the Rosh Yeshiva of Tarvadas. My father actually learned from him for a very short while. Hagoyin Reb Shloima Haiman, and it should be subsidive Davis Bakever. He wasn't zeichet the children. He says that it says Rashi brings Gedoy Lachnas as Orchim Yosef me Kabbalos Pnei Shechina to Gemara in Shabbos and Chav Zayin, that when they came to Avram Avinu, he was being Isaac in Kabbalos Pnei Shechina. And so Rav says, you see that he dropped Kabbalos Pnei Shechina, take care of the earth, and we see Mitzvah Gedoy Yosef Gedoy Lachnas as Orchim Yosef me Kabbalos Pnei Shechina. So Reb Shlomo Haiman asks, he was Isaac b'mitzvah of Kabbalos Pnei Shechina. And the rule is always, ha'oisik b'mitzvah, pater min ha'mitzvah. Somebody's watching an Aveda, he's pater from doing another mitzvah. And you don't start measuring, this is maybe a bigger mitzvah. But certainly Kabbalos Pnei Shechina is a mitzvah. So why did he drop that for Archim? So it's interesting. Reb Shlomo Haiman answers. He says, because Kabbalos Pnei Shechina is not a mitzvah chiyuvis. You don't have to. It's a nice thing to do. Whereas Archim is a mitzvah chiyuvis. He says when Arch knocks on your door, you're mechuyev to take care of him. Kabbalos Pnei Shechina is a mitzvah kiyumis. So he says the mitzvah chiyuvis is doicha a mitzvah kiyumis. The problem on that is that the Gemara says in Sukkos and Daf Chavav that somebody who sells tefillin, and he's standing in the shuk, he's selling tefillin to people, he's pater mikol ha-mitzvahs. Why? Because called it Isaac b'mitzvah. People are going to buy from you the tefillin, tzitzis, etc., and they're going to go home and do it or whatever. So they're pater min ha-mitzvahs. So the question is over there, nobody's mechuyev to sell tefillin, and yet on a voluntary mitzvah we say ha'isik b'mitzvah is pater min ha-mitzvah and a mitzvah chiyuvis. So why did Avram Avinu drop Kabbalos Pnei Shechina to be mekayim the mitzvah of achnasas archim? Two riddles. One about achnasas archim, well, they're really both about, but one is about Isaac b'mitzvah pater min ha-mitzvah, and the other one is how could we learn from it when in effect he wasn't mekayim a mitzvah. Let's go to our fabulous guests.
We have the honor of having with us on the phone from Detroit, Hagoyin Rabbi Sorscher. He's a Rav and a Posek in Detroit. He's actually a Posek in America. And he also, you may have heard him on Shas Illuminated. Welcome, Rabbi.
Yeah. Shalom and David.
So, Rabbi, we want to ask you some shidduchim, but halacha more than hashkafa. Okay, but Posek, we needed a Posek. We have a lot of people saying hashkafa. We wanted halacha. Is there a shaila of Yichud in a car?
There is a tshuva from Rav Moshe, which discusses the shaila of Yichud in a car, and he encourages not to be together in a car, but it wasn't accepted. And the accepted halacha is that as long as the roadways are well lit and people do at least occasionally go on them, there's no shaila of Yichud in a car. It should be avoided to go to a dark roadway which is deserted, particularly if you're going to park there. That would be a serious shaila of Yichud. But on the regular, normal roadway, there's no shaila of Yichud.
So it's interesting, Rabbi Aharon, you're referring to the Igros Moshe Evan as a Daled Siman Samach Hayes Gimel, but you say it wasn't accepted by the world.
No.
Interestingly. And let me ask you, would there be a shaila of Yichud taking a hike with a girl? I don't think many people do that.
Again, it would definitely be a shaila of Yichud if you're going to an area which is not frequented by people. But as long as there is a reasonable chance that somebody will be there, even though at this time you're alone, there wouldn't be a shaila of Yichud.
If you would get embarrassed by somebody walking by, you would say it's not a shaila of Yichud. Is that sort of like a fair thing to say?
Yeah, but the question is it likely, or at least possible? Is it a reasonable possibility that someone will walk by?
Now, when you talk about the Poskim would disagree, I've seen like a body of certainly Hasidic Poskim who hold it as a shaila of Yichud in an elevator. I mean, quite surprising. No,
an elevator wouldn't be enough time for Yichud anyway. I'm saying an elevator you might say is worse because while the elevator is between floors, there's absolutely no possibility of anyone coming. But the reason why there's no Yichud in elevator is because it's not enough time that any michshol should happen. So,
I'm saying it's similar to either hiking or driving in a place where somebody may pass. At that moment in time, there's nobody there. But if 2 minutes later somebody could be there, that means you wouldn't behave that way. So wouldn't that be very similar?
It's a little different.
Okay.
Hiking the pshat is you're not. There's always a possibility the next second that someone will come. That's why an elevator might be a drop more chummer.
Because in between floors, it could be more than a second.
No one's going to come.
Yeah.
Right. But on the other hand, the reason why elevator is better is because it simply isn't enough time. You'll know for sure you're going to get to the point where people could come in a very short time.
On the other hand, an elevator could be worse because you do have the ability in an elevator to freeze it by pressing the fire button or you know what I mean. You could.
Yeah, but it's practically impossible to do. No one.
Yeah. Nobody's doing something inappropriate in an elevator and pressing the fire button. Is what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay. What about a ben nida? You have a baal tshuva or a baalas tshuva. And it's actually my father, Zechron Levracha, learned by Rabbi Shraga Feivel Mendelovich. And there was a bacher in the yeshiva. He came from prior parents. He became a baal tshuva, became a standout. And there was a shidduch that was being read. And they said, look, he's a ben nida. And the Shulchan Aruch, I think it's in Even as the Daled, says that a ben nida has midas rois, etc. So Rabbi Shraga Feivel sent my father to the Satmar Rebbe and to the Labin. And the Satmar Rebbe told my father, and I heard this from him himself, he says, if the Tata given a goy was to make gefrekt, it's no different than if the boy would have been. And so the family didn't want to do the shidduch. So Rabbi Feivel then sent my father to the Ramash, the last Lubavitcher, and he said it was before he was Rebbe. And he said that Torah is mitayr. So what is the Litvischer opinion of something like this?
The Litvischer approach is not to be makbar on it. Different gedolim like Rav Moshe and the Stipler wrote shuvas encouraging not to be makbar on it, and they gave various reasons why it wouldn't necessarily be a problem. It's not a strictly halachic issue. Halacha, it's 100% mutter. The question is it something to avoid? Is it something to avoid? As you know, it's a pagam. Does that mean that there's an inyan to avoid it? The Litvischer Gedolim felt that it was important to paskin not to avoid it because hayos in the times we live in with Balei Tshuva, people becoming more firm. It's important not to be merachik these people. Now things have changed when Chazal said that it was a pagam. at that time, faket, that would encourage people to keep the laws of Hilchos Nida. But now there would be somewhat of a michshol to avoid such a begaim. And like we're saying, if it's a halacha, you'd never make such a cheshbon. But there's absolutely no halacha. Halacha, it's 100% mutter. It's a question of inyanim, and there we could work a little bit more with the Tikkun Olam. But they gave various reasons. One of them is similar to what you're saying from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that all the Gemara means is that it's likely that it'll turn out bad, but if he actually turned out very good, it wouldn't be a problem. Rav Moshe says that since you see that he turned out, or he or she turned out so good, that would indicate that the mother actually perhaps was matayr herself.
She went swimming. I think Rav Moshe says she went swimming in the ocean. Yeah. He
says. Of course, we would never say such a cheshbon if it's a halacha, but if it's just an inyan, we could use such a cheshbon. And the disciple also discusses it, and it's generally in the Litvisher world. It's generally accepted not to be makbid on it.
Yeah, I think the Kilos Yankiv, and it's in Yavamis and Memtes, says very similar reason. He says it's just something to be weary of, but he says if the practical shows that the person is a mitzvah, and it's obviously the chash. So it's interesting. You have here a point with the Kilos Yankiv and the Stipler. I'm sorry, the Stipler and the Lubavitcher Rebbe actually Mechavin one kiva.
The Hungarian Hasidim are still makbid on it. It's true, and that fits with the Satmarov's thing. But the Litvisher Rebbe, like you're saying, was instructed by their Gedolim not to be makbid on it.
Okay, how important is Yichus?
Again.
And let me give it, to make it non-hashkafic, maybe halachic. The child of Gerim, right? This would be sort of an extreme case of a yichus. Do we embrace them, sort of like Boaz did Rus, right? Like Rebbe Kiva was the Ben Gerim, or do we go with the Gemara? The Gemara seems to be very weary about marrying Ben Gerim, and I think Rav Moshe has a tshuva where he's weary of it. If you're a Rav and somebody says, my daughter was read a boy, his parents are Gerim, how would you respond?
It's very individualistic, like you're saying. It's not really halacha shayla also, and it might be different than Ben Anida in a way. But then again, when you're dealing with shidduchim, there are a lot of other factors to take care of, and certainly if somebody feels that the shidduch is the correct one, and the marriage will be successful, it's hard to turn it down. Who knows if there'll be another shidduch? It's a question more of adifus, if it's a question of this as opposed to something else. And also, there is part of a tikkun olam. These people also need shidduchim, and it's a little bit hard that they should marry just each other. But that's more of a shayla which each individual should ask based on his or her circumstances.
Notwithstanding the tshuva of Rav Moshe, if you feel that it's a good shidduch for your child, then there's just differing opinions on it, and we see Gedolei like nobody who's bigger than Rabbi Akiva, and Mashiach came from Gerim, right? So
right. So in the end, it's also la'alach. It's 100% mutter. It's also only a question of inyanim and what's the best thing, and therefore a lot of other things will be taken into the cheshbon in such a case.
So let me continue that theme. The Gemara says, "La'olam yisa adam bitay l'talmud chacham, or l'bat ben talmud chacham, or b'nai l'bas talmud chacham, im loy kafsik ifnei etc." So the question is, a bas talmud chacham. You have two shidduchim. You have a bas talmud chacham, and you have somebody who could support you. Mm-hmm. How would you, as a Rav, advise the person?
Again, this is not mamash halacha, but there is a svara that's been said that
even though the Rambam does bring it and Isurei Biyad, I mean, it's broad. It's not just
right. No, 100%. No, there is a big mile of bas talmud chacham. There's a mile for two reasons. There's a mile of bas talmud chacham because a person should be. It's Ubay Sidbak tells you to be hidabik b'tamidei chachamim, and in that the Gemara says, and this is where the Rambam brings it, that as being davik b'tamidei chachamim, you should marry a talmud chacham's daughter and marry off your daughter to a talmud chacham. That definitely is a big mila, and it definitely applies today as well. There's also a mila, like with the Gemara Pesachim you mentioned, that a Bas Talmid Chacham got a good upbringing and the things that they saw in the house. There is a svara, they say, that today a girl has much more influences than her house, as opposed to in the Gemara's time, where there, if the house, she's a Bas Ha'aretz, it would be impossible for her to really understand what a true Talmid Chacham is. And today, since they go to schools, it would be easier. But still, there's no replacement for the house. But again, since it's not mamish halacha, it's 100% mutter to marry a Bas Ha'aretz. So other factors could go into the cheshbon. Other things could go into the cheshbon, and it's definitely a very important cheshbon in making a decision for a shidduch, but it's not the only cheshbon. There are a lot of cheshbonis. It's a more individualistic question, which can't be answered in a general ofen. It's definitely a factor. It's definitely an important factor. Perhaps it's not as important as it used to be, but it still exists. Definitely something to take into cheshbon. What's important is that a person shouldn't take into cheshbon just how people are going to react, what type of a noise it's going to make when they're engaged. Those are superficial things, which very often goes into the cheshbon. I need a chashiv shidduch because I want people to be machshav me. In the long run, marriage is too important to consider those factors, which are actually completely unimportant. A person should be just focused on what's better for him, what's better marriage. And there's no question that Bas Talmid Chacham has a mila, has an important component, but it has to be looked at in a very general picture.
And how about Yichus in general?
Same thing. The Gemara says, "Va'olam yidbek adam b'tevim." The Gemara in Bava Basra, Yichus is important. Yichus does play a role on both the spouse and perhaps on the future children. But again, it's a factor which should be put into a general context. There are a lot of other factors that go into a marriage. And again, what I would advise to avoid is the superficial value of Yichus. People will be impressed, and that should not be considered a cheshbon at all. But there definitely is a cheshbon that Yichus, the schus aves, and the Yichus does definitely make a difference, but it's not the only thing in the world. If someone has a lot of Yichus and is not a good person, obviously the Yichus is not going to help him that much. And someone could also be an excellent, fantastic person with zero Yichus, and that might be the correct shidduch for the person.
What about going to a bar? It was this week's parsha. I once heard over from Shlomo Chaim Kanarik years ago. He told me that the makor to go to a bar is because you see that the others went to Avuda Behemis Gain Chinkin. They went to where the behemoths go to drink. That's why we go to a bar. So going to a bar, is it a lounge? Is it problematic?
It depends, what exactly you mean by a bar. And as a place of pretzas should definitely be avoided. You shouldn't expose yourself to pretzas. If, like a lounge, like a hotel lounge or something, even if there are other couples there, is not necessarily problematic. But if it's a place where most of the people who are there are going for improper purposes, definitely from Ben Torah or even just the regular from Yid should not be in such a place.
Okay, what about getting married ahead of a younger sibling, an older sibling?
So,
I just want to point out that we found something because a little bit of digging. I actually have somebody brings a letter from the Stipler where he talks about. He says today that he says Habanos Yoitzis Lilmoid Mechanches Beskula or whatever Beit Sefer. So you don't have to be makbid on it. He says it's only in the Doris or Rishonim that the Meschanches Rak Bebeisam.
What about Bas Talmid Chacham?
Yeah, the guy Bas Talmid Chacham. Yeah, going back to the question, Bas Talmid.
So that is a sign.
I actually found it in writing from the Stipler.
What he means is like this: the Gemara is saying that you're not allowed to marry a Bas Ha'aretz, lo yisa Bas Ha'aretz. When they shehem shekes and shehem sheres, and the same amar sheichem called behema the Gemara Mesachim That, he says, doesn't apply today. That's only because she was a product of her house, and there was no way she'd be able to really understand.
Baron, he says it even a little more. He says, the Bachram asked him, just that Chazal say that you should be mizdabik b'bas Talmud Chacham, the Yimker Kala Shaloi Kedei Linase Lebas Talmud Chacham, is that Neigeya? So on that he answered, Hayre Zakin, Manig Derein or Gain Mistaipo, Shekol Zeis Omer Hayu B'Deiris HaKadmoinim, and today a person should not sell Kala Shaloi Kedei Lidambik b'bas Talmud Chacham.
Yeah, regarding selling Kala Shaloi, I would agree to that. But I am saying that it is a cheshbon even today, even inside the chinuch of the person, because you can't really replace the chinuch of the home. But there are a lot of factors. In other words, one of the factors is that it's important often that the background should be similar. Again, it's not ma'akiv. People with dissimilar backgrounds have had very successful marriages. But in general, it's a good idea the background should be similar. So if you have a Talmud Chacham, but the background is very dissimilar, let's say from a different country, a different culture, and you have someone who's not a Talmud Chacham, but the backgrounds are much more similar, that's definitely a cheshbon. You have to it is an important component to be put into a very general picture.
Okay, so let's go back to the question. You have a younger sibling wants to jump ahead of an older sibling, a younger brother, a younger sister. What's the...
So Moshe has a tshuva on that as well in Igros Moshe, and he said that even though the Gemara in Bava Basra, and it's actually brought in Shulchan Aruch, says that the marriage has to go al pi the ages, but that's only when they're both ready to get married. So then the question is, which one's getting married first? Is it say the Kedima that the older one gets married first? But if the older one is not ready to get married, and the younger one has a mitzvah chiyuv to get married, he has no reason to wait.
The older one is trying, and the shidduchim just either they're not being read, or what happens then?
Right. So again, Rabbi Moshe is saying that halacha, there's absolutely no problem, but still, it depends a lot on the family dynamic, on how much it means to them. It does make sense, in my opinion, to wait at least somewhat for the older sibling, if the older sibling is Maggid on it, or even if the older sibling is willing to be mevater, but if the younger sibling sees that it would be difficult for the older sibling, it makes sense to wait a little bit. But there's a shiur, because if you wait too long, that could affect the quality of the shidduch that you'll get and the shidduch process that you're going to go through. So it makes sense to
wait a small amount of time, but otherwise you say halacha, there's no issue with going yet. This is it's the first tshuva of Moshe and Igros Moshe and Ezra Chelik Beis. What would you say? Showing the picture before going out. What's the das Torah? What's your feeling on this?
It's if a bacha wants to see the picture of the girl before meeting her, I wouldn't think there's any kpeda. I think that's fine. If a girl is uncomfortable giving out her picture because of sneeze purposes, then I don't think she should. I don't think that she should. That's fine. I don't think she should be persuaded not to.
So you're sort of neutral on it. You say halan v'halahu. You're sort of neutral.
Yeah. I mean, if the girl has no problem, and the bacha would want to see a picture before meeting, there's no problem. But some girls are sensitive, pushing out sneeze. They don't want to give out that picture that people should see. It is a sensible sneeze concern, and if the girl has that sensitivity, she shouldn't be persuaded not to.
What about from a hashkafic point of view that if we give out pictures beforehand, we're sort of saying that you are what you see. A person is much more than their picture. I mean, I happen to know both boys and girls who are extremely on a physical level. If you looked at them at first, you would think they were literally monkeys, and they were very attractive people. And why is it? Because they shine with a certain effervescence, with a chen, with a personality. It could be humor, it could be opinion, it could be a sense of the way they focus on you. And when we take it and we just we boil it down to a picture, we're saying this is what the person is. Because we don't have. I'll give you a mashal. We don't have any pictures of what Moshe Rabbeinu looked like. what Avram Avinu looked like. We don't, and it wasn't by accident. There were painters that go back to the medieval times. You don't have pictures of what the Rishonim looked like. And I think that the reason is because Moshe Rabbeinu's, he's the one with the nice nose. That's not who Moshe Rabbeinu was, or the Rajba didn't have a nice chin. That's sort of silly. So when we take a person, we say, you are your picture, we're sort of tagging the person in such a minimal way.
It is a good point, but still in all, I'm saying obviously that's not going to be that's not going to be anywhere near the deciding factor if somebody gets married or not to this one.
But it could be the deciding factor whether they agree to go out, though.
Yeah, but I'm saying in marriage, as opposed to Maggid, the physical appearance does mean a lot. And also there is, although you're right, it could be confusing, but there is a certain amount that you do understand from just the picture. And if somebody just feels comfortable before actually agreeing to meet, which is somewhat of a commitment, it's like you find out about the person. I mean, when you find out a person, you ask questions. Obviously, there's no way you could get anywhere near a complete picture just from asking questions about the person. But you want to get a certain comfort level before you meet, which is somewhat of a commitment. Definitely seeing the photograph is definitely part of getting information, processing data about the prospective shidduch. I don't think there's anything wrong with it per se.
Okay.
Because sometimes the girls don't like it. They feel it's a lack of sneers. That's the only kaved against it. And if a girl feels that way, she shouldn't be persuaded to do it. There's definitely still a lot of bachrim that would not look at the picture. In some families, the bacher wouldn't look at the picture just as mother would, and a lot of times even that not. And one girl once complained to me that when she asked to see a picture of the boy, she was very brusquely refused, and she said, I don't understand why a boy should have to see a picture of a girl, and a girl wouldn't be able to see a picture of a boy. And
what do you think of that?
Right.
She is right.
She's 100% right, yeah. You know what I'm saying? A girl also needs to have the physical appearance that she wants, and you see a lot in a picture, and there's no reason why. And shadchanim do often take pictures of boys and put it on their resume, and if a girl or her family would ask for it, they would give it.
How much of your past, Rabbi Aharon, do you have to reveal? You have a boy, he was at 17 or 18 or 19, he had a few good wild years. Then he went to Eretz Yisrael, he went to one of the great yeshivas there, whatever they may be. And he didn't go, and he straightened out. He didn't go to Eretz Yisrael, he did it over here. A lot of people in Eretz Yisrael don't have a good success. They have much more success in America. I don't want to be the whole brainwashing that if you didn't go there. So if your parents didn't spend a lot of money and you didn't go to a few hafganas, you didn't steig, or you're not a good girl or boy. It's like it's absurd what's it called, Kool-Aid they feed everybody today. So 17, 18, 19, they had a few, lively years. He had a boyfriend, she had a girlfriend, she had a boyfriend, he had a girlfriend, and maybe they went here, whatever it may be. Now they're 22, 21, 19, whatever their ages are, they've straightened out, they're really wonderful. They're dating. How much should they be disclosing to the other side? At what point do you say, it's a mekach toyes, it's Aina, Ramosha calls it Aina. Aina is ad shtus, and Aina is also even ad shtus. You can't gyp the other person. You can't. At what point do you say it's being dishonest? It's midvar sheker terchak.
Yeah, it can be given as a very general thing. It really is very individualistic. If it's something which really doesn't matter, there's some things that might even never come out, or some things that when they come out, they're really irrelevant. Of course, you don't have to air out the dirty laundry. If it's something which is relevant and does make a difference, of course, you have to reveal it. I'll just say one thing that I very strongly disagree with what a lot of Rabbanim advise. Very often, when there's a problem, usually a medical problem, whether it's a physical medical problem, like let's say celiac disease, diabetes, things that aren't terrible, but it's a problem. It's something to think about. Sometimes it's an emotional medical problem, a mental health issue, even a minor one. They're taking medicine for depression. They're taking medicine for anxiety. Whatever the case is, you very often hear after the third date that they got a psak from a rav not to reveal it until after the third date. Sometimes it'll be the fifth date. Sometimes it'll be the first or second date. But that will be like the psak that they received. And I think such a thing is very self-defeating. I think that, in other words, it's assuming a premise that if you reveal it right away, then most people would say no, and you won't be able to find the shidduch. But once they meet you and they got to know you and you went out for 3 times, then already most people would put it into a general picture and say yes. It's a fallacy. It's 100% not true, and very self-defeating and demoralizing for the person themselves, for the person with the problem. Such a thing, Pasha Al's good advice, is important. Again, you're not going to write it on the resume. You're not advertising it. But it's important to reveal it as quickly as possible. You want to know if the person inside, if the person that you're going out with is going to be makbid on it. You want to know that before you go out 3 times. And I've seen time and time again people using this policy. After the 3 times, when they reveal it, they don't get a 4th date. Often they say, well, anyway, it wasn't good. I anyway was going to say no. This had nothing to do with the decision. But it certainly did. After 3 days, you're not sure. There's some good, there's some bad. You don't have a clear picture. This is almost always going to be a tipping point, especially that the other side feels a little deceived. You know, he didn't tell me now, and I'm working hard, and all of a sudden I get this bombshell. It's a put-off.
She's saying a boy or a girl should right away say, by the way, I have somebody who sits next to me in shul. He's a doctor, an elder, you know, and I shouldn't say elderly because, you know, my age, everybody suddenly doesn't seem that far away. But he's not a youngster, and he a few times a week he works for Chemed, and he says 50% of the people I see have been on or off depression medication. So hi, let me read you to Zalman and Fega, and they've both been on and off anxiety medication.
We're talking about 2 different things. If it was something that happened a few years ago, it's not something that really is part of the personality. In other words, it's something which the Rav would tell you, and again, you have to ask the Rav because it's individualistic. But if the Rav would tell you, you don't have to reveal it altogether. You don't have to say it, period, because it makes no difference at all. Then I'm for that. I'm talking about something which the Rav would say, no, you cannot get engaged without telling them this particular thing. That's not allowed. Right? You're taking medicine for diabetes, you had a childhood cancer, whatever the case is, celiac disease, and you're on a special diet, you cannot get engaged.
What about things like anxiety?
Also, if you're taking medicine at this time for anxiety, it's something which is a recurring, you know, something which is a issue that you're currently dealing with and expected to be dealing with. It is somewhat of a struggle. You're a wonderful person. You're a great, you know what I'm saying. I have no problem with it.
You should disclose that before dating?
Again, if it's something that the Rav told you have to disclose before the engagement, or you have to disclose after the 3rd date, my take is no, disclose it right away. You want to know who's not going to want it. And if you think that no one will want it before you start, then I'm telling you, no one's going to want it after the 3rd date either. You got to find someone who wants it. You got to find someone who's okay with it. And the way to find someone who's okay with it is not going out 3 times and then telling them. The way to find someone who's okay with it...
Isn't it fair to say there's a big body of halacha that disagrees with this opinion?
It's nothing to do with halacha.
Well, I've seen it in Shuvas. I'm saying that Posek who say that if it's something you have to reveal, you can wait a few times. I think even Ramesh has a Shuva about it.
Halacha, you could wait a few times. I just think it's completely self-defeating. I think it's horrible advice. For halacha, could you wait a few times? Probably. You're not doing anything wrong. I just think it's terrible advice. In other words, it's the Posek who would discuss it are assuming.
But Ramesh,
assuming like this. They're assuming that people who were told right away would turn it down, and people after 3 times won't turn it down. There's actually a very, very small percentage of people that way.
I'm just telling you, Ramesh,
almost everybody who will turn it down right away will turn it down after 3 times. And you're trying to find someone who won't turn it down after 3 times, and you want to find that person before you meet.
I'm just pointing out, Ramesh and Arachaim Dalatzim in Kuf Yud Ches. I'll read his lashon. He says, if you want, this is about a girl who had an affair beforehand, and she wasn't a. She says, Moshe writes, Aval ein tzricha lahagid lei, Merayi v'akar. The Pam Rishayna dayin lo yadua im yirtze b'chlal hashidduch. He says, don't do it Pam Rishayna. You don't know b'chal if he'll want the shidduch. U'mela aser az lahagid lay. He says, you should not tell him. V'rak achrei shetedi sheroitza lisais chababor shekvar amar lach
v'davar
b'ziber b'davar nesuin shrichas loy merak. He says
he doesn't say after the third day when he's still trying to decide.
No, he says you should tell him after he says he wants to marry you.
After he knows 100% he wants.
Right.
And he's talking about one thing. He's talking about a girl being mizana, and also might depend. It might depend on different cases. Now, in such a case, perhaps Rav Moshe is assuming, and it could be it's true, depending on the mood, depending on the crowd, that someone who already decided to marry a girl would then most likely not change his mind when he hears that she is mizana. Okay, that could be. You know what I'm saying? And also, it could be such things changed in 50 years, with a different type of a crowd, a different type of the culture definitely changed somewhat. But even Rav Moshe did not say to reveal it while the person's in the middle of the time.
No, he said you should only do it after he proposes.
Right. So what I'm saying is there are some cases which I would say that. There are some cases which, which the chat is that it's not something that, it's not the pshat Rav Moshe said not to reveal it right away because he'll say no. That's not what Rav Moshe is saying. Rav Moshe is saying you don't reveal such things until then negeya. So you have to reveal it to the one you're getting married to after you know that you're getting married.
What about Rabbi? What about Rabbi? A boy or a girl had a girlfriend when they were 16, 17, 18, 19. Do you have to reveal something like that?
You can't answer this question generally. It really depends what type of a shidduch it is, what type of people they are.
Let me ask you another question.
It has to be individual.
Let's say you're called about a boy or a girl, and you know this boy has a serious issue. He's on antidepressants. He's on serious medication, right? And you don't know the other side calling. It's a balabas or a rav or somebody from Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee. I just picked that out of a hat.
Okay.
Could be Anchorage, Alaska. And you know the boy's family, and you know the boy's on antidepressants. So they ask you, what type of boy is he? Is he a good boy? Do you say, he's a wonderful boy, and just not disclose what you know? Do you disclose what you know, or do you decline to say, I'm not sure?
It depends on a lot of factors.
Okay.
Again, it's really hard to give a general thing, and people should, when they get questions about information, they should ask shilas. Sometimes it's hard to ask a shilah just then and there, but sometimes, if the question is maybe do without it and then ask a shilah, people should and people do. I get many shilas often about what to disclose in that, and it really depends a lot on a lot of different factors. It's really hard to give anything very general. I will say the one thing I could say in general is it's something that you have to really be circumspect. You have to really think about a lot, and when you have a shilah, to ask such a shilah. Okay. But in general, one of the differences is it depends if you were given as a reference or not. It depends a lot if the person is being saimach on you that there are no problems, as opposed to just asking you general, you're just one of the informants in a general thing.
But let me give you a case. Rabbi, let me give you a case. I live in Tennessee. My daughter just came back from some seminary or from school, or she didn't come back, and she's being read a shidduch. The boy davens or in your shul, or at least I know you know the family, and I call. Now, did I make 60 calls? No, because if I'm your average person, I have 2 jobs or maybe 3 jobs. I'm run ragged, so I'm going to make 2 or 3 inquiries, it's really the truth, for my daughter. So I think that when you call somebody, there is weight to it. I mean, it's not like there's going to be 40. You're not calibering, Berking, and so it's a serious issue. I think. Are you telling me the boy is on antidepressants? What do you say?
The one who's being asked, particularly if he's a rav or a rosh yeshiva or something like that, should touch base with that family and discuss with the family what they want, how they want to deal with it. Now, again, if he sees that the family is being unreasonable, then perhaps he'll have to tell the family that if someone calls me about the shidduch, I'm simply going to just avoid it and say, I'm sorry, I can't help you, and speak to someone else. because I don't accept your permission. I don't accept your position. In other words, if they tell him that, and don't tell anyone who's an antidepressant medicine, and they'll find that after the chasna or something like that, it could be you should avoid the whole thing. But or it could be if you get a call, you should say it. But again, people are usually reasonable, and this should be worked out with the family. What's their policy? What do they want? Obviously, they don't want to hide this information. How do they want it to be done? In other words, if they're going, having being married before that, I don't like the approach of telling after the third date. Nevertheless, if they receive the psak of some sort that they're only going to tell this thing after the third date, so perhaps it's okay for you to go along with that, as long as they are going to know about it eventually. I can't say halachically it's wrong to do it that way. I just would tell them that, in my opinion, it's not advisable. But you know what I'm saying?
But let me give you
I think the guy to touch base with them. Now, if you're just a casual friend that happens to know this information, it's in a case where you could assume that they're taking care of it. So perhaps it's perhaps not a problem. If you are fakir, if you are on the side, if you are close to the one asking, if they're your relative or something like that, that would also change the picture.
So let me put it this way: is there ever a heter? And the reason I say it is because I've gotten so many calls from people. My daughter's getting divorced. We called up a Rabbi, we called up a Rav, and they said, no, he's a wonderful boy. They didn't disclose this, and they didn't disclose that. They didn't disclose he has terrible anger issues. And now she's going through a divorce. And I got one call from somebody who says she's an aguna now for 3 or 4 years with this person, and they're so bitter about this sort of this feeling of like cover everything up, hide everything. And the guy asked me, what happened to Loisame Dal Damriyecha?
No, that's 100% true. If you know that this marriage is no good, if this person is not really an appropriate marriage candidate, then you definitely should say it.
Or is it fair to say?
Be careful not to exaggerate.
Is it fair about
to give very accurate information? And in order not to exaggerate, I always tell people, say it a little bit less than what it is. Don't say it exact. Say a little bit less.
Are you doing any mitzvahs? Are you doing any chasadim and mitzvahs? Are you being a tzaddik? Are you being a chassid or a chafetz chaim by not disclosing information that could affect the marriage, that could lead to shalom bayis, that could lead to divorce, or any of these things? Are you being a chassid or are you being a chassid?
It's a complete aver, 100%. But I am saying also, though, that not everything that you know about, not everything that they want to know about should be disclosed. I think that's a fair statement.
You know, the fact that the boy went to a movie is not very relevant, right?
Right. It's not. There's not klal. And person just has to be two things. The person needs: A, to be circumspect. You have to think a little bit. Spend time thinking about it, especially if you're a reference or whatever it is, or maybe after the call, maybe during the call. Don't say anything, but spend time thinking about it, and spend time familiarizing yourself with the halacha and the hashkafas HaTorah with it. And when there is a shayla, don't hesitate to ask a shayla. That is true. And yes, it's 100% wrong to say that somebody is good and has no problem when you know that they do. And yes, it's extremely damaging, and it's a major problem. And you're right. Sometimes it does happen that way, that all the people close to him cover up on a problem, which is a serious problem, with disastrous results. But like I said, if it's a problem, the problem is that you mentioned about antidepressant medicine, which doesn't make him a dangerous person. It makes it uncomfortable, but sometimes. But when you're talking about things that are a danger to the marriage, it's a different thing. And they're also very often the like we said, the family would not be, in such a thing, would not be reasonable about it, would insist, no, when he gets married, everything will be fine, and chas v'shalom, don't tell anyone, etc. And in such a case, when you see that the boy or girl's family is being unreasonable about the chesaron, then you could, particularly if it's someone close to you, but even a total stranger, you could take things in your hand and say, I know information that, and I'm telling you, this is not a shidduch you have to. This is not a shidduch that you could do, period. Very often, if they'll trust you with that, then don't say anything. Don't tell any
Is it, Rabbi,
information.
Is it any avera you overload samite if somebody asks you information? Well, when I say talk about antidepressants, I'm not a physician, and I think probably 70% of America has been at some time in their life.
I'm saying that's the point. You know, it's not like I don't think the marriage. I don't think they're going to get divorced because people didn't say that somebody was
took for a few weeks. But no, my point is different. My point is what I would do in such a situation, and tell me if I'm doing the wrong thing, Rabbi, when you have one of the great poskim of America on the phone, it's good to ask this question. If it's somebody who, if I feel it would get back to them, it could injure my relationship with them, and I don't know the person calling me, what I would just say is, look, I really don't know this boy, and you have to ask somebody else. Am I doing anything wrong?
You could do that. If you're not mentioned as a reference and you don't necessarily have to know that, you could do that. You could do that. And, often you could do that because they will have people that are appointed as references in that, and they would have people that it's their job to take care of it, and it's not necessarily your job to take care of it.
It also sends a little bit of a warning signal, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, and that's okay. It's okay. It's okay that they get a warning signal. Saying when it's definitely okay. When I had experienced finding a shidduch for someone, I very often knew when someone said, "Oh, I can't really answer that. Call this and this person." I really knew I didn't have to bother calling this and this person. I know what they're going to say. Yeah. I know the shidduch is not negated. I could tell by the tone of voice. Which is fine. Which is fine. We do check out for a reason, and it is important that something that will negatively affect the quality of the marriage should be known by both sides before they make this momentous decision. Yeah. The only question is when to say it, how to work it out exactly. Also, sometimes you don't know if there's any problem. It's just a suspicion that becomes a shaila, etc. And like you're saying, what about information which you think wouldn't negatively affect, but maybe the other side will consider it a suspicious thing? All these things have to be done with two things. You see, asking a shaila is not enough. You also have to think well, understand the situation as best as you could, and when you have a shaila, ask a shaila. Yeah.
Well, Rabbi, it's a great honor to have you on.
Okay.
And your advice as always is just remarkably, besides the Torah, the common sense and the practicality of Shimush is just appearance. So thank you very much for your time.
It's my pleasure, and keep up your Vedas HaKodesh. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Bye-bye. We have on the phone with us from Toms River, New Jersey, Rav Yoel Asher Labin. He's the Rav of Kahal Noyam V'Ratzin. He's a Talmud of Satmar. He's a Talmud of Rav Rosenblum, from Shara from the great Dayan Rabbi Chatzkel Rata. He's a writer. He's a speaker. Welcome, Rav Labin.
Shalom.
So we're talking about dating, and the question is, how many dates is the right amount? There's the famous story, Kasti b'chayim b'bnei Shas, I think. The Kloiserberger said, the one, after Shach said you need 8 dates, the Kloiserberger said, Kasti b'chayim b'bnei Shas. And yet
I heard it on Moshe Big. Okay,
same thing. Okay. What he said, okay, whatever. The nusach is the same. On the other hand, we have the Gemara. The Gemara says Nechayis Dargus Viditza. The Gemara says, I forgot, Hamtein, or the Gemara says, be careful and slow before you get married. Right? What is it? Hamtein Ache Tidbek Maser. What is the Gemara? Kveitz. No, this is the Lashon Gemara. Kveitz Zavinara. Misoin Nesiv Itza. The Gemara in Yuvamis and Asamach Gimel. So Rashi says, Hamtein and Adshe Tivdek. Take it easy when you're in business. You could rush. Take it very easy in Shidduchim. So here's the question. You have 3 ways. You have, let's say, the more, we'll call them the modern Orthodox, for lack of a letter bitui. They go out, longer periods of time. I went to yeshiva, so I think I went out, 7 or 8 times, which was like Rav Shach said. You have the Hasidim. They go out, I think, 1 time. And my question is, I asked this to another Rav. I said, people dress up in outfits that they rarely wear to go to places they're never going to go again, speak about things they rarely will ever speak again, to make decisions for the rest of their life. So what is the appropriate amount of time for dating?
Yeah, it's an excellent question and topic. As you said, this goes back to the Gemara and the Rishonim and the Gemara, the famous Gemara, Ravidum Rav, Usal Udam Sheikadish Isha Yereno. And also the Rambam says, Mittel is tackle b'fnayav pnuya, ele bot kakadash yira imi noe ba'ainov, va'aim bezeit tzad iser. V'loy oid, not only is it not a iser, usually it's a iser to look at a besila or a beila. V'loy oid ele sherui lafes kain, you should do it. Ava lo is tackle derech zenis. But the Ravid is choilig, the Ravid brings the Gemara in in Bobabasra, Hai Tzovim Rabun and the Uzel Kedisha Itza should take an Amuretz with him because the Talmud Chochem will probably not look at her, so he could machlefli, he could have a mistake and not remember who was his. Amuretz is bookie, so the Ravid brings down this in the Hasugas Ravid, and as you said, this you said it in the name of Rav Shach. I hated that Moshe Bik, he was the big Posek in Brooklyn, in Borough Park. He gave a drusha that too many gittin is going on, so we should do 8. So and then it was the closing Magaruva said Chatzti B'chaya, and the Menashe Klein, the Mishnah Aluchas, wrote a few tshuvas neged Chuchem Echot She'umar. So I think it is Reb Moshe Bik. It looks like it was a local Borough Park argument, back and forth. So the Menashe Klein is the famous Mishnah Aluchas is bringing making the case you should meet the least, and this is the way it was in Hungary, in Galician, and the most Hasidic Mekoimos. So as you said,
how many times did Rabbi Menashe Klein say you should meet?
Rabbi Menashe Klein doesn't give an answer, but exactly. But he's going out. He looks at it as an Indian of a shkuf. He says that this is derech hamaskilem, hamiskadlem. He looks at it as a modern idea. You say that the old way doesn't work, and you come in with. He looked at it as not only as an Indian of Re'iyas, he looked at it as a modern. And he brings down that Shamati b'shem Roy Fegudel psychologist Shashidach Achitoy he Bucher Shalaru Mo'ilam im B'sila. So that's what he's saying. And I'm told today it's the Hasidic Mekoimos. I had one. It's called a Bisho. And not only is it not a date because you're going to the Chitten's house, but all the siblings are already with their Shabbos clothes, and the cake is on the table with the mashka. So it's not like really. You have, of course, after the Bisho, you'll be asked. So what do you think? You want to go ahead, but the cake on the table is giving already the answer. So the question is that what Rav meant? If a Bisho is like, everyone knows that a Bisho is just something that happens 2 hours before the Vart, it's not the point. So, of course, there should be, the Chassidische world, even though the minig is that it should be only one time, of course, it is important to make it really, it should be really something more meaningful than just a minig of meeting. Of course, the parents are making all the research and the information, and the mechetunim are meeting beforehand and everything, and so there's a big chance that they know their son and they know the daughter, and they know before the Bisho that it will work. So the Bisho is only a technicality, but it's. I think this is the least should be one real date where the parents give them the freedom. This is important from many
so let me ask you, Yoel, given the high divorce rate, and it's gone up considerably in the Hasidic community, do you think they should revisit the one date and done rule?
Okay, so the answer to that is it's really, let's see the pros and the cons of both ways. Most 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old people are not ready, don't even know that they can't grasp the depth of the idea of marriage. Two strangers coming from their own backgrounds and experiences to make a one unit. It's marriage is the biggest decision that a person could make in his life. You're a young man, you're making a decision that will affect generations, and of course it will change your life. And it's a big commitment. Having a good marriage is really, really the biggest work. People could be successful in their life, build up the biggest businesses, or being the biggest admoirim, whatever it is, achievement you can think of. And the one biggest thing of having really a home where you feel yourself and you're being healed, that's what marriage should be. It's so big that in one hand, whatever amount of dates you'll offer them, they'll not get really to the bottom of it. It's nothing could prepare you to actual marriage life, especially when hardships come in, kids. So no matter what way you do it, you're not really ready.
But Rabbi Labin, let me compare this to a business deal. A person goes into a business deal, they want to buy something and sell something, and they do due diligence. And the rule is, no matter how much due diligence you do, you're going to have failures along the way, right? Like, you could be the most successful firm in the world, you're going to have failures. Warren Buffett. But none of them would say, therefore, let's do away with our due diligence. They're going to say, look, you could do everything right and still be wrong, right?
Right.
So the question, but you still do it because you want to eliminate as much of the wrong as you can.
Right.
So with shidduchim, yes, it's true. You could go out with a girl 250 times or a boy and still not know. But it's certainly that if you went out a number of times, you're going to know a lot more than if you went out a few times. So the fact that you could go wrong with 250 times is not a reason not to see if there's a real chemistry, if there's right?
Right, of course. So in the end of the day, it's a little bit of a betuchen stadless question. And it could be that the Hasidische way in Hasidus, the betuchen stadless question is also depends. It's mekisha to the Yediyah Bechira question. The more Bechira you have, the more stadless you should do, and the more you believe that Hashem Yisburach is Yedaya Hakol, and we only have a little bit of Bechira that we don't understand. So you do, you know that you walk in and you have a lot of betuchen. The Hasidische way was always with more of the betuchen way, without the calculations. But they both have a place in Yahadis, of course, stadless in betuchen. And so that was my point, that feeling, those who will only do a shidduch, they'll only marry when they feel ready. A lot of them never feel ready. So the Chassidish way in both ways, you have to, at a certain point, you have to say, I'm jumping in. I'm taking this.
The question is when.
The leap of faith.
Question
is how much, yeah.
Right. And my question to you in particular is, given the rising divorce rate, and part of it is because, when we lived in a shtetl, people, they had one cow and they said, Tamim ti Hashem alekecha. The world has infiltrated, if you're in America, every place today. Even the Mormons are having this.
Of course
So the question is, should we deny the reality that your average Chassidish Bacha today is not living in Papa circa 1922, and we just close our eyes and say, let's make believe he is? Or do we say, look, your average boy today has seen a lot more than his Zayda saw in Papa, and being that, it's important. He's not going to, if there's no chemistry, there's no connection with the girl, it's not going to have a happy ending. With his grandfather, it may have had a happy ending because he never saw a magazine in his life. With this kid, it could. So maybe is there a possibility that things should change given the higher divorce rate? That's really the question.
Yeah, of course. And I would add that even though in the end of the day you don't know, people need to feel in control. At least they have to know in their own head that was my decision. I'm working a lot with Chassidish Ingelat, married Ingelat, and also with a lot of divorce. I have a program for divorced Chassidish Ingelat, and of course, a lot of people I see, a lot of cases I see, a certain bitterness and also a blame game that it was never my decision. It was my parents. I was one of a few Askunim. We arranged the Shabbaton for Chassidish divorced Ingelat. And I interviewed, on this Shabbos, 24 hours, it was a very powerful Shabbos, and a few hundred Ingelat, about 300 Ingelat. I interviewed...
And they're all divorced? 300 all
divorced, yeah. Chassidish divorced in here. And I interviewed most of them, and I gave a speech in the Shabbos morning meal, and I said that when you start talking to Ingelat, so you have a one-on-one what's going on in your life. So people are private. People don't want to share too much. So they will say, "I'm living in a little stupid place. I don't have a normal job." That's everyone is comfortable to complain about that. You'll go a little bit more. You'll come to what happened in the marriage, and he'll complain about his ex or trauma he had. When you go deeper a little bit, it will come down to the parents, because somewhere. If you don't feel that was your decision, if you know it's your decision, it's your bashet, plus it's your decision. I knew and I made the decision. You will make it work. You'll work hard. But if you never felt that this is your decision, it's just you felt forced in, especially if you didn't have a too good relationship with your parents. You thought they don't understand you. They're people from the old generation. They don't see what I see. So you're being forced in. So whenever something doesn't happen, you have whom to blame. So you don't take responsibility. Of
so there's
course,
a lot of bitterness.
It's a very, very big problem. It's a very big problem.
Rabbi Labin, I have a Tosfos that a Messiah l'dvarecha, and the Gemara of Asla Kadashish Ad Shiur, the Tosfos asks, he says, but it says, I'm sorry, the Gemara says that a person shouldn't be Mekadesh Bita Ktana. For Tosfos, there's a klal, Tavla Mesav Tandu. And because of that, the Isha doesn't have to see the person. She can elect not to see him, even though by the issue say Asla Kadesh Isha, the Isha doesn't have to because Tavla Mesav Tandu. So why is there a problem of marrying off your Bita Ktana? So Tosfos says, he says, yes, if an Isha elects by her own will to say Tavla Mesav Tandu, she's going to live with her decision. She says, look, I wasn't expecting a handsome guy. I'm happy with it. But the Ktana didn't make that decision. The parents made it for her. He says, when the parents made it for you, there's no Tavla Mesav Tandu.
Oh, beautiful. So you mentioned this Gemara of Usaludam Kashish Achiyerenu. I'll tell you a shtickle title that I said lately. I think it makes a lot of sense. So my question was, why is the Gemara saying, if the problem is that he will hate her, he will be in sinner, so it's a lav. A lav is stronger than us. So the Gemara should have said, this was my first question. My other question was, if someone is not noisechain, you have a vaira of haftul rachel kamoichu. I mean, everyone has to be my taste. Haftul rachel kamoichu means you should deal them with respect, with dignity, but you don't have to like everyone. My answer was that the Torah doesn't talk too much about what we call today modern psychology ideas. Let's say of self-acceptance, of not judging yourself. Ideas you can find in the Chassidus. We don't see it in the Psikim so much, but we have the most powerful Posek of Haftul Rachel Kamoichu. Haftul Rachel Kamoichu said in the words you have the very clear that Kamoichu, you can only love someone else as much as you love yourself. All the problems. People who hate others, usually they have inner pain. They are messed up by themselves. It's not only a relationship issue; it's an inner issue. So my answer to Gemara was that if you live with the issue that you don't like, you don't love, you'll be over of the kumoichu. You'll be bitter. You'll be bitter. You'll be burned out, ausgelassen. So the Gemara says. But in the Gemara you have also something else. Actually, Eno means you should see her. You should see her. You should understand what is living with another person. Usually, an 18, 19-year-old boy who didn't do avodas amidas yet, he doesn't understand the world. Doesn't really mean what you see in someone else. You see the fish love. You know the famous fish love. You see how someone else could help you and what you are missing. Actually, Reno means you should look out of yourself. You should see someone. This is avoided. And most of the people are not ready at that age. So it's. I think that the question is not only in dating. The question is, a parent should know: is my son ready? Did he have normal relationships with his siblings? Is he ready to live with someone else? This is a hard question.
So given all the hishtadlus you've done on behalf of, and you say 300 divorced younger light. Do you think that in our generation, given all the exposure people get, the demands of a modern marriage, the multiple sometimes jobs that people have, the woman is running, she's coming afterwards, going to bed. Do you think that one date of Bisho is still enough? Should there be 3 dates? Should there be 8 dates? What do you think? Well, how would you advise the Chassidish Olam coming to you with their children?
I would say it depends. A parent has to know their child. If he is the independent type and a thinker, and he has a lot of, if he is a tamimzige boy and you did all the research, and you want him to get married even though he's young and he's inexperienced, so you do your best, and even a small bishul could do the work. It's in the end of the day, it's a personality. But I think that what is more important is the parents should know their kids before they get married, because if you'll send them to therapy or to fix avodas hamidas, could be the Rosh Hashiva, it doesn't have to be the therapist, after marriage, it's much more complicated. Parents have to know their kids, and sometimes you take a 18-year-old boy who's really a kid, without any experience in life, never left home, never left this little yeshiva, and that's problematic. So send him to therapy, or send him to a big mechanic, or send him to there is a new idea of a shidduch coach. I think it's a very important, someone who doesn't want to change the minig of just having a little bit show. At least the boy should know what is marriage. He should talk to the shidduch coach or to the mechanic. What should I ask? What should I look for? What are my goals? This is the more important thing. They both should be ready. They both should know what life is about and how they will live together.
Do you think that after one bisho you could know whether you have chemistry with the other person, whether hashkafically, whether is a meeting of the mind, sense of humor? Do you think one bisho could do that?
The answer would be if the boy knows his own personality, he's developed emotionally, mentally. His parents made a lot of research and they took it really serious, and they both know that they try to make the bishul. Let's say they'll have a bishul of a few hours. They want to make it, really go to it with seriousness and with understanding, and then it could work. But but let me ask you a question. Would you hire a president of a company after one interview, 1 2-hour interview? No, but this was the way the Hasidic world looked at it. A bar mitzvah boy, if we would decide when a bar mitzvah boy is ready to do the mitzvahs, would give him a quiz, and we'll see where he stands with understanding, his maturity level. But everything, now he's 13 years old. Now Shabbos is coming. It's not if you're ready or not ready. So that was the way all the years. You went to the yeshiva, you picked up a bucher. So the Hasidic world doesn't want to have any changes, and that's the way they look at it. Now it's the age of Chassanom, and you will make it work.
But Rabbi Labin, Rabbi Labin, 2 things. When you say the Hasidic world doesn't want any change, let's say the Quakers don't want any change. So right. They say, so we don't use phones, we don't use telephones, we don't have newspapers, we don't use the printing press, we don't have TVs. So our children are the way they were then, and we're making the same decisions they were then. But the kid today who we say we don't want any change, your kid has been on an iPhone, he's seen magazines, he walks around New York, he sees posters, billboards, you do have newspapers. So how could we say we want to be the same when the people who we're marrying are very different than the people than what was the same? And the proof in the pudding is the 300 people who you said you had by a divorce thing. So are we being realistic when we say we want to be the same?
Okay, so it's a very good argument. You're bringing up a very smart argument. It's a cognitive dissonance. We live in 2018. We do business in New York, but at the same time, we don't want to go in. We don't want to think certain things. That's the Hasidic way, at least. So I'm not saying if someone would come ask me, I'll tell him, dude. Of course, your son should be as prepared as possible. So, but at the end of the day, we can't. In the Hasidic world, we're talking about thousands and thousands of families and kehilos. That's the way they do it. So let's hope they at least they do it within their minhag. They do it the best way. So let's say a shidduch coach. This is a perfect example of someone who doesn't want to change the minhag. So he would only send his kids to 1 or 2 or 3 dates. Let's say whatever he will do, but at least he will pay someone smart, someone who is experienced, to sit with this boy and discuss what is a shidduch and how you can make the few dates the most valuable and so on. This is at least using your
working the best within the situation, yeah. Rabbi Labin, one last question. If you had to say the rise in divorce in the Chassidish world, and you had to boil it down to 1 or 2 things, what would it be?
Mental health and emotional issues is a very big factor.
Yeah, but Rabbi Labin, we've always had mental health and emotional issues. Right.
Okay. So then there's a lot of people who are used to living freely. A lot of Bukhrim are going to learn an Etzisrul or something. They have a very open life, free, and if they're being forced into marriage, a lot of Chaver just can't take the pressure and the commitment, and they're young, and a lot of time it's just they were really not ready yet. This is one aspect. And of course, a lot of parents, it's very sad, but a lot of parents are thinking about their own, who is the nicest machitten, who would be a perfect match for them, from their own, where they see themselves, their status in the community. That's painful. That means, in a way, you're Maggid of your own son for your own ego. This is happening all the time. That's how it works in a lot of families. The shotgun will bring office, and you'll see, this is a nice man. He's a rich man. And then how is the daughter or how is the son? This is like secondary. This is really, really, really sad. But it's also happening.
Are you saying that the concept of Mavir Zari Lamoilach, somebody who sacrifices their kids for communal approbation, so they throw them into the fire for the Avodah Zarah, but they became a hero, it's alive and well today in Shidduchim for people
in all communities. Let's not kid ourselves.
No, in all communities. I didn't say. I'm not. It's alive and well where people will do the shidduch that's best for them and that's best for their child. So Mavir Zari Lamoilach, Issa Derais is very negeya today in a different version.
Yeah.
Well, Rabbi Labin, thank you very much for your time. As always, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you on with us.
Okay,
we have the honor of having with us on the phone Rabbi Benzion Shafier from the very famous, I guess it's a podcast, The Shmooze. He's a Talmud, he's a Musmach of Yeshivas Chafetz Chaim. He's the author of many books, which have been translated into 5 or 6 different languages. One of them sold over 50,000 copies, which is the equivalent of a New York Times bestseller, probably selling 50 million copies. It's just an incredible number for such a small. In our world, when something sells 10,000, it's a blockbuster. So to sell something that sold. So welcome, Rabbi Shafier.
Thank you very much.
So as somebody who's written a book about marriage and dating, I'd like to ask you a number of questions.
Sure.
You know, it seems that boys who have a little bit of a history and girls who have a little bit of a history, right? Some people feel we should treat them differently. So my question is, I'm going to give you a two-pronged question. Number one is, how much in dating should we be disclosing about our past? Right? Like some people say, oh, I have to bare my soul. I have to say, should we or shouldn't we? And then as a follow-up, should boys who have somewhat of a past or girls who have it be treated, should there be a double standard? Or should we say, no, we treat everybody the same as far as disclosure?
Okay, so David, first of all, again, I appreciate you inviting me on the show. And I want to share perspective. I think, the two prongs of questions really are based on one premise. And I think it's a good place to start. What should a person be looking for? Forget the global issues of the Jewish nation, but as an individual, what should a person be looking for? And I think there's really only one hishtadlus that a person should be doing when they're going out, and that is the same hishtadlus that they should be doing for everything in life, and that is looking for the one that Hashem deemed appropriate for me. What that means is not the smartest guy in Lakewood, not the richest person. the person who's matim, who fits me. And I believe if you want to single out the single biggest mistake that most people make when it comes to dating is they're looking for, whether it's yichus or money or smart or intelligent or good looks, whatever it may be, and the single criteria called, is this the right one for me, never seems to enter into the equation. So I don't mean to evade your question, but if someone were to ask me that question, I would sort of bracket it within this context. What are we looking for? Now, if you're looking for the one that's right for you, so obviously let's focus on that. Let's focus on that single criteria. And then I think the issues of, past and not past, obviously it's all a part of a person.
Okay. Well, Rabbi Shafier, I accept that. In fact, I'll tell you that I was speaking to, I believe it was Rabbi Naftali Yeager a while ago, and he said it's amazing how few parents ask him the most important question when they call him for shidduchim. And I said, what would that be? He said, will the boy be good for my daughter? He says, few parents ask that question, will the boy be good for my daughter?
Right.
But the reason why I skipped that question, in all honesty, is because we have had a number of different people we're interviewing. So maybe for the Olam, I didn't want it to be repetitive, so my goal was to ask a little bit different questions of each listener, and I had asked that question of Reb Manis Friedman, who immediately precedes you, so I apologize. But I think that's a very valuable point. The most important thing to look for in shidduchim is the puzzle piece that's missing in your puzzle. There's no such a thing as the best puzzle piece.
Exactly.
It's the puzzle piece that's missing. Okay, acceptance. Given that go ahead.
Can I interrupt for just one second? So, along with Rabbi Yeager saying, I also get many calls on a regular basis, and it's almost comical to hear this string of questions that people ask. Now, because they're looking for the, so I'm waiting for the ultimate question. To me, in the process of looking or checking out what I call the paper test, the single question which almost never is asked is this person a mensch? And it's meaning to say, are they a person who be matim? The criteria, again, I what I call the paper test and the basher test. The paper test is, on paper, do the two line up? Do they have approximately the same approach to life? Are they looking to build a home, the same sort of home? In broad brush strokes, are they really about in the same area? That's what I call the paper test. The basher test is when you go on a date and you see if it's basher, if it clicks, if it works, if it just seems to be the right one. But the paper test is when you're calling up someone with reference, and in my case, let's say I was a Rabbi, of this person years ago, and the string of questions that I get are utterly ridiculous. And then I get to the key question, which they're not asking. And after 20 minutes or so, I'll usually say, so would you like to know about his midos? Would you like to know about who the person is? Would you like to know what kind of husband he'll make? And I'll tell you why I say that, because again, even though I agree with you full-heartedly that the puzzle piece is what you're looking for, the missing puzzle piece, there is an important paper test, and that is you want to know if what you see on the date is what you get. Meaning to say, a young man and a young woman, they go out, very nice, but there's a lot that no one is really showing. Everyone puts their best foot forward, everyone puts on a beautiful smile, but you're often not seeing what the person is. So one of the criteria I think that you will look for in a paper test, which again, the reference checking before, is psychological stability. Is this person really a mensch? Meaning to say they make a very nice presentation. I know my daughter fell for him, but who is he? What's his essence? What's his basis? Who is this? What kind of father will he make? What kind of husband will he make? And again, ironically, those questions are not typically asked, in what I call the paper test, in the reference checking.
So let's talk about checking.
Mm-hmm.
Can a shadchan lie? If you're asked a question, can you lie? I mean, is it ever appropriate to not tell the truth?
That's a wonderful question. I don't know if it's true or not, but you know the acronym shadchan, sheker, dover, kesef, notel, right? So it's definitely an assumption that there's going to be shading of the truth. And the truth is, let's actually deal with that for a moment. There is a certain reality that everyone's going to sort of paint the picture a little bit nicer than what it is. And within that context, then it's not an issue of sheker, it's an issue of appropriate, meaning to say it definitely, you if that's what people do, they sort of, just like at a funeral, everyone's a tzaddik and a goyin and So that's what's assumed. So within the world of Shadchanis, I think it's the same. The single issue where I think really things get very, very iffy.
Wait, I didn't get that. So you're saying that. So is it appropriate or is it not appropriate? If sheker dover, if that's what the shadchan is, so is it or isn't it appropriate to lie?
So here I come to that iffy point, as I say. The iffy, squishy point, and this is really the issue, is what about when there's something that's clearly a real problem that will be a problem potentially in the marriage, and it's not obvious here in front of the person.
Give me an example. Give us an example.
Well, again, let's say a person's on, is psychologically, let's say they're on a medication for a psychological issue, meaning to say it's an, bipolar, anxiety, something. But again, I don't mean in a minor because everyone has stuff. I mean to say it's something that's or medical issue that really is. So now that's a situation where I think everyone involved is obligated at a certain point to reveal that information. Meaning to say, it would be absolutely, it would be egregious, it would be potentially mekach tos, but it certainly would be a wrong thing to continue.
Rabbi Shafier, let me continue then. Somebody calls you up. They say, Rabbi Shafier, you know so-and-so. Tell me about him. Would you disclose that he's taking antidepressants? Would you or would you not?
Absolutely not.
So how does that stem with what you just said?
What can I tell you? Because I don't know who this other person is either.
Well, whoever it is, if they come away with an impression that this is a very nice, marketable boy or girl, and then they find out, a year after they're married that he's really on some type of psychedelic drug, they're going to be really upset that you didn't tell them.
So I'll tell you the rule when it comes to reference checking. And you excuse me for being this blunt, but you have to find people who cannot lie to you. What I mean by that is as follows. I have, Baruch Hashem, married children, and when I check out, what I do is I find people who I have a relationship with them such that they would really feel badly not revealing that type of information to me. You see, let's assume... But
Rabbi Shafier, so we can be sort of dishonest with people who we're not close with, and we have to be honest with people we're close with.
Have you considered politics? That's a very interesting reframing of what I was saying.
No, I'm saying if somebody calls me up and he says, David, what do you think of so-and-so? And I know the person's taking antidepressants and things. If I say smiley things and then that person meets me years later and they say, you fooled me, my answer can't be, I'm sorry, I didn't know you well enough. I think that would be a very wrong answer for me to do. I mean, the din of Leisamed al Dam Riyach has nothing to do whether I know the person or not.
Right. So David, again, you have managed again to reframe a little bit what I've said, and let me sort of try to explain where I'm coming from, my perspective, and you're more than welcome to slice and dice it as you see it. But anyway, here's how I view the situation. You call me. I never met you before in my life. I don't know you from a hole in the wall. You call me asking information. Now, because I don't know you, your daughter, or your son, whatever it may be. The question is, what are my obligations as a Jew, in this case as a reference? So any pointed question that you ask me, if you ask me a pointed question, that becomes a very real issue and is much more difficult to avoid. Typically, people aren't that sharp, so it's very good. They manage to not ask the particularly pointed, sharp questions. If you ask me a pointed, I've heard that this person is on is seriously depressed and is on medication. Do you know anything about it? That puts me in a real quandary. I'll explain to you in a moment why it's a quandary.
But let's assume they don't ask you the question.
Right. So then I would not reveal anything, not a word.
So in effect, what are we doing? We have this person. They're from out of town. They don't know anybody in Muncie, and they read a boy or a girl from Muncie, and they call me up and they say, David, what do you know about? Is this a nice boy? And I say, well, he's a nice boy. He's this, he's that. And I don't tell them that the boy is seriously depressed. And this is some Baal Tshuva family, or maybe not a Baal Tshuva family, some honest family from Tennessee. And I am, in effect, leading their child down a terrible road. And my justification is because I don't know you, so I won't disclose. I can tell you I wouldn't do that in real estate.
Right.
Even if I never met the person.
Absolutely. So, but let's sort of paint the rest of the picture so we see what's going on. This person calls me. I don't know them. Their daughter may be on, as you said, psychedelic drugs. She may be an entire basket case. I don't know. Therefore, my obligations are to both parties here. Now, again, if you were to ask me a pointed question, I can't avoid that. But because I don't know your daughter, I don't know you, why am I being megala? Why am I revealing things that may... Now, obviously, it's the fellow's job by date 3 or so, before things get too emotionally involved, to reveal it. And any fellow I work with in dating knows that clearly. Before things get too serious, if there's an issue, you must discuss it.
But Rabbi Schaefer, if it was your daughter dating a boy from Memphis, or your son dating a boy from, I don't know, some Pittsburgh,
okay,
and you called up somebody in Pittsburgh where they gave you a name, and this person gave you all smiley things, and your daughter or son married the boy because they didn't disclose it, and then you met the person 2 years later at a chasana. Now, 1 second, and you said to the person who gave you the smiley thing, you know, my daughter or son, they're living with a maniac. He doesn't want to give a get now for the last year. Why didn't you tell me they're on drugs? And I said, well, I didn't know you. Maybe your son was a basket case.
Right.
Would that be? Does that seem right to you?
Absolutely.
It does seem right.
Absolutely.
So if somebody's drowning, I want to ask you, can you find any Makar Lalacha if somebody's drowning in the river and you say, listen, maybe they're a basket case, maybe they're not, I should throw them a raft. Where does it say such a thing? In the din of Eitzara of Samad El Dam Reyecha? I don't get that.
Excellent question. I think you're asking very pointedly, and it's a very good question. And let's see if we can perceive what in fact is, the other perspective here. Okay, so number one, again, it is the obligation of a party involved before things get too emotionally involved to reveal a certain piece of information. Let's assume whatever the information is, it is their obligation. Certainly, again, any young man or young woman I work with knows that is their obligation. And if someone calls me at that point, I certainly would tell them, you must reveal because you're at a point with that information. Now, if they hold that back, they should have told them, I can't tell you. Now, here's the problem that I face. You call me. I don't know you. Your daughter may be, listen, every pot has a cover. So you're right, this fellow has this chasron, and there are going to be plenty of young women out there who also have chasronas. Who's a match for who? I don't really know, and that's not my job to match them up. So if, in fact, I know your daughter very well, and I know she's in the... But
you don't. Let's say you don't at all. If somebody's calling from Tennessee. Let's just talk more...
I apologize. I don't mean to interrupt you, but let's assume I know your daughter very well, and I know she's balanced, and she's put together, and she's a fine balas midos. In that case, I say to myself, wait a minute, this is not a shidduch, this is not appropriate. I have an obligation to reveal something to you. Why? Because I know your daughter well, and I know that this is not appropriate. And in fact, the fellow may not reveal it on a date, and therefore I have an obligation to reveal to you, listen, I just want to tell you, this is not a shidduch. Good. Most of the situations are, I don't know the young person, the parents calling me, I don't have a clue. Therefore, again, if they ask me a pointed question, I can't lie. When you're a Rebbe in yeshiva, and in my own personal life, I deal with hundreds and hundreds of people. People call me all the time, and obviously, if someone calls me, it's typically about something serious. So I know many, many fine young men, many, many fine young women, and I can tell you that they have very real chasronos. But here's the question. Does that mean they're not going to make a good husband, not going to make a good wife? So the answer oftentimes is no. It's an issue, something you have to deal with. And by the way, I know many, many young men today, probably more than young women, not to say that them, but who have psychological issues. I don't mean to say that there are more young men with psychological issues, but I'm just saying it happens to be my population. I deal with far more male than I do with female. And I can tell you a tremendous amount of people have very serious psychological, psychiatric issues going on. Despite that fact, they make happy husbands, fine fathers. And I could tell you I deal with young marrieds on a regular basis who have serious issues going on, yet they're fine. They go about life. Now, here's the question. Do you say, well, this person has a mum, and therefore they shouldn't go out with anybody? Now, again, they are obligated. I'm going to say this for the fourth time during this radio interview. They are obligated at a certain point in the dating process to reveal that. Anything that is a serious issue like that, they're obligated to discuss because they're not allowed to go further beyond that. However, they are allowed to begin without mentioning it. Why? Because this person is a package. The package has a lot of milas and a chasaron. When you see the milas and the chasaron, you're able to judge it as a totality. If you present the chasaron before you get a chance to see the milas, you're not allowed to see the person for who they really are. and therefore this person may not find his or her bashert, and that would be a takala. That would be a terrible thing to do. So therefore, you're right that it's a very delicate balance. In other words, there is an obligation. You call me, certainly it's a lav in the Torah. It's not to be taken lightly. On the other hand, there's a person you're asking me about who's a human being, and this human being is complex, and there are many elements to him. Now, if you want to sit down for an hour and discuss the complexity, the good, the bad, and here's the whole, maybe we could discuss, but that's really not what's happening. You're really looking, and in a cursory glance, again, I don't know, what you're raising.
Let me ask you another question. Okay, let's move. Let me ask you. You have a boy who, I don't know. Maybe he's had some girlfriends. Maybe he's done some bad stuff. Now he's fine. He's in yeshiva. He's doing great, and he goes out with a nice Beis Yaakov girl. Does he have to disclose, by the way, 3 years ago I had a girlfriend, I went to here, I did this. So how much do you have to disclose? Like, yes, maybe if he's on mind-altering drugs, we all agree he would have to disclose that. Is he supposed to disclose that he went to the wrong movie? Is it that he had a girlfriend? What's the line? What do you and don't you have to disclose?
Okay. Excellent question. And this is exactly why Das Torah is vital. You see, the criteria here is, who is this person today? And he can't answer it. His Rabbi can. Meaning to say, a lot of people have past. And therefore what? Now, if that past is a very real part of who he is today, that's something that has to be discussed, because what she's getting is this person. If his past is no longer a factor in who he is today, then it's something, again, that requires serious looking at and serious discussions. There are many issues that are better off not discussed. And a Rebbe often will tell a Talmud not to discuss it because, again, it's no longer Nogeya. It won't affect.
Give us an example.
Well, you mentioned movies, things of that ilk.
He had a girlfriend.
All right, let's say he had a girlfriend. Okay, let's go with that. But let's assume now he no longer is that person who he was in high school.
Right. He's 100% a different person.
Good. So now here's really the issue. If she would understand him fully and completely, and understand that who he is now is not who he was, then there's, he could reveal, I guess, fine. Unfortunately, a lot of times, girls especially, you see, let's deal with something which really comes up very often, and that is the issue of, desire, which really is far more of an issue for guys than it is for young women. And he might have been involved in things that he shouldn't have been, and certainly a Ben Torah wouldn't be, but he was. And now he's worked on it, and now he's gotten past it. Now, here's the problem. To her, in her mind, this means he's not a Ben Torah. And by the way, I hate to tell you this. I have this on a regular basis. I get women who call me all the time. I found my husband watching pornography. How could it be? But I want you to appreciate what her question is. He's a Ben Torah. He learns every night. How could he do this? How could he do this? And my answer to her is, you'll never be able to understand. Because from a woman's perspective, if a woman's happily married, assuming that she's psychologically put together and she's happily married, she's not going to be wandering, her eyes are not going to be staring at different places, and she's not going to have those issues. A man could be a masmid, he could be a Ben Torah, he could be a Yerushalayim, but he's got to be ever on guard. And if he's not, things happen, and before you know it, he's at places that he never dreamt of. But here's the great dichotomy. He really is a solid Yerushalayim and a real Ben Torah who's deeply aghast by what he does. He's hugely embarrassed. And he understands it. I understand it. His wife can't understand it. Because in her image, he's not a Ben Torah. A Ben Torah would never do it because she would never do it. She has enough Yerushalayim, she wouldn't. So that's a situation where you have a gender differential. She is not going to be able to understand him, and therefore there's very little to'elis in him revealing that information to her. Usually it's damaging to a marriage. He has to work on it, and he must. So in a dating situation, again, this is under counseling of Das Torah, if his Rav, his Rebbe feels that he is no longer that person, and it's no longer representative of him, revealing those types of information usually are just damaging to the relationship, could stir the shidduch, and oftentimes a young man will be counseled not to say it.
I know you look at the person where they are today, not at their history. Basharusham. So let's turn it the other way. It's a girl. She had a boyfriend. Maybe she's not even a psula anymore. And now she went to seminary. She learned by Rebbetzin David. Wherever the case is, she comes back. She was the best girl there. They go out, they call you for a shidduch. It's somebody you know, and the girl is, they ask about the girl. Do you disclose her past or not?
Okay, so again, let's assume we're after the third date already. So now, and they call me after the third date, and it's getting serious, and it really is, So
forget about you. Let me do that again. Does the girl have to disclose it?
Right. Excellent.
Forget about you. Does the girl have to disclose it?
Right. Okay, so the basula issue that's a problem, because that would be, let's assume it's anything but that. Let's assume she had a past and she did things and it's whatever it may be, and she no longer is that. So again, I would counsel her to seek out a Rav, a Rebbe, and someone to discuss it with. But very likely the answer would be that it's not. I don't know. It's not necessary to be discussed. It's not who's going to gain from it, who's going to be helped by it. Oftentimes, I would suggest not. If in fact it's helpful to the relationship, maybe it really it's very hard to answer because everything is a case by case basis, and it really depends on how serious, what the consequences are, who they
Let's say it's identical to the boy, the same for the same boy we just counseled. His twin sister comes in, same exact case. What would you say? Is there any difference? They're both in a totally different place. He went to Mir. He went to pick your favorite yeshiva. He went to Brisk. He went to she went to Rebbetzin David. She went to I'm sorry, I'm just so outdated with these seminary names. It's an identical case. Would there be any difference between the two?
Okay, so Baruch Hashem, I have 4 daughters and 2 boys. So okay, so let me sort of, I believe what you're...
Rabbi Shafier, the reason why you make the big bucks is that you could answer the tough questions, right?
Exactly. Okay, you're right. So what you're alluding to is a certain reality, and that is typically a girl is compliant and obedient. Oftentimes, guys aren't. They say that there's 5 times reported cases of ADHD from boys as opposed to girls. Certainly, in a normal situation, a girl will be able to make it through the system. And if she doesn't, it's indicative of something very, very important to focus on. Meaning to say, you could have a boy who, whatever, had his wild past, and it doesn't mean anything about him because he's wild or he's just not, I by nature am extraordinarily, I just don't deal well with bosses. I'm just very, very independent, highly independent. And because of that, I had great difficulties in school. But because I'm a boy, that's considered within the range of normal behavior. If a boy gets thrown out of school, it's not necessarily indicative that he's really that much of a flawed person as much as boys, are wilder and boys do these things. Typically, when a girl is, out of the system, it's often indicative of a more deep-rooted problem because, again, the nature of girls are typically to be more compliant, more obedient. They have an easier time following the rules, etc.
But let's assume it's a dating. The boy had a boyfriend, the girl had a boyfriend. Would there be any difference if today they're clean and they're wonderful? I shouldn't say clean. I don't want to. If today they've come out of their respective seminaries, yeshivas, any difference the way we look at the two?
Right. So the reason why that whole introduction was in this situation. It's not as relevant as, again, did she fit into the basic tsura of whatever school, whatever community she was in? If she didn't, to me, it's more of a red flag again, because typically a girl it's easier for her to conform.
So you're saying there should be a double standard.
Well,
that's in effect what we're saying. After all, the caveat, bottom line is there should be a double standard.
I guess the caveat is that each human being is judged as a human being. No blanket rules, no stereotypical. Meaning to say, when you have a girl who has a past, if you were asking me, I'd be a little bit more leery. I'd look in a little bit more deeply.
If she asked you, what would you say?
So if I knew her well, and here would be again the criteria, does it define who she is today or not?
No, it does not.
Then there's no reason to tell.
Let's say she wasn't a psula anymore. Would you have to do that?
Yes, that's a different issue because that is a serious, again, potential mekachtos, and that is a serious, that has to be discussed. Let's say a guy has a tattoo. Does he have to discuss it? He's a ben Torah. His mom is gewaldig.
I would say he has to discuss it because she's going to find out and be very upset about it. That's all.
Well,
just common sense would say disclose something. If it weren't for that, why would he disclose it? Does he have to say that he wants a tray for something? No, he doesn't. If he's not holding the anymore, why is this or then different than that is?
Okay, you're right. The truth is this,
Do you think should a boy be marrying a girl from or a girl should we try to marry up when we marry?
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to mess up one's life.
Okay.
Marry up for money, marry up for religion, marry up for looks, marry up for social status. That's one great way of wrecking your life. What you should be looking for on a date is one thing: the person that's right for me. I am not the CEO of GM. I'm a regular person. I'm looking for the person who's right for me. Not the best Yichus, not the prettiest, not the person who's the right match for me. And what's astonishing is that Hashem gave us a perfect system to know that. The paper system, again, is before you go out, you see on paper, are they holding it about the same place, looking to build the same sort of house? And you also look for any psychological skeletons in a closet that you're not going to know because you want to see if what you get on a date is what's really there. And then you take the Bashar test. The Bashar test is the most intuitive, instinctive test. You just see, does it work? Does it feel right? Do the conversations flow? Does it, the Shivas that I used to ask on such a regular basis, do you look forward to the dates? Do you enjoy our company? Does it feel like it's a proper fit? Now, what's amazing is Rav Wolbe brings in the name of the Chazon Ish a tremendous concept. The Chazon Ish was asked, 40 days before the Vlad comes down, Bas Kol Yotzas, Pito Shaploni Ploni. The Bas Kol comes out, the daughter of so-and-so to so-and-so. Here's the problem. I don't hear the Bas Kol. Very nice. There was a heavenly voice that decreed that so-and-so is my match. I didn't hear the Bas Kol. What good does it do me? Rav Wolbe brings down in the Chazon Ish that when you're on there and it just feels appropriate, feels that is the Bas Kol. Hashem lets you know. Hashem guides you. If you open your mind, not for yichus, not for money, not for what other people are going to think about it, but do I feel that this is the right one? Does it just sort of naturally fit? Do the conversations flow? Do I enjoy?
So basically, we should not marry up in Frumkeit, and I strongly agree with that. And I can tell you, I see many cases of people who have and regret it dearly because they're just not comfortable in their skins anymore.
Yeah. I mean, again.
Okay, let me ask you. A boy comes to you. He says, I'm being read a lovely girl. She's not a bas Talmud Chacham. The Gemara says, "La'olam yisa adam bas Talmud Chacham. La'olam bas Talmud Chacham yisa bas Gedei Liader." Which interestingly, you could be a Gadol there, not a Talmud Chacham. La yisa bas Gedei Liader, etc., etc. So my question is, he comes to you and he says, "Rebbe, they're reading me a girl. She's a lovely girl. She went to a great Beis Yaakov. She's not a bas Talmud Chacham. What do you tell her?"
Okay, so here's what I call. Those are what I call filters. What I mean to say is as follows. My wife wanted to read a shidduch to my nephew, so she called up my sister-in-law, and my sister-in-law said something like, well, we get 50 resumes a week. Now, she was a little bit exaggerating, but not totally. So if you have a stack of resumes, there are filters that you can use. Who do you think is more likely, first of all, in terms of whatever criteria you have, and then things like, as you say, Bas Talmud Chacham, et cetera. Those are filters when you're filtering through a pile. Now, you come to a name, and it checks out for every which issue, and you go out, all filters are gone, all issues, there's only one thing, it's called the Bashar test. Is this the match for me? Filters are good to sort of sift through the pile because it makes it more likely. So, for instance, let's say you have a person who's, a young man who's very outgoing, and he feels he needs an outgoing girl. Now, he might be dead wrong, by the way, and oftentimes he is wrong, but let's say he feels that way. And there are two names in front of him, one's very outgoing, one's very shy. As a filter, it's only appropriate to say, well, I feel, this is my personality, I feel it's more likely. But once he's on the date, if he says, yeah, I feel right, it feels good, but I need somebody who's outgoing, that's a terrible, terrible mistake. Because you don't know what you need. If you're married 80 years, have the wisdom of Shlomo Melech, maybe you have an inkling of an idea of how a marriage works. Most people don't. And I've been I've been involved in marriages and counseling for, I don't want to say for how long now, but I'm married, Baruch Hashem, 32 years. I can tell you that most people don't have a clue to what makes a marriage work, and certainly when it doesn't, then for sure they have no clue why it doesn't. But here's the bottom line. Anything you think you need, it might be true, may not be true. So as a filter, if there are two names in front of you, you could use it as a filter it's more likely. Okay, once you're on the date, it's irrelevant. There's only one thing that's important. Is this person a match? Does it feel comfortable? Does it feel right? And by the way, I cannot tell you how many times young men make this utter error. on a regular basis. I have guys who say, I'll ask you, do you enjoy that? Yeah. You look forward to it. Do you want to be, but. And there comes the but. She's not this, she's not that, she's not that. And I say to them, but Nar, do this. What do you want? Do you want to be happy, or do you want to marry the best girl in Brooklyn? And the problem is that people get so hung up on their issues and what they need, what I have to have. I won't be happy until I get that. They pass up the bashert and they wreck their lives. What can I tell you?
What do you believe about giving pictures before a shidduch is read? Do you believe in that or not?
If she's very pretty, it's fine.
And
I apologize for my honesty.
Okay, so you believe, giving pictures is appropriate.
It could be I didn't say that clearly enough. It could be I was being a little too facetious.
Yeah.
My words were, and maybe I shouldn't say it on radio, if she's very pretty, there's nothing wrong giving the picture because then he will go out with her. Your question probably is, if she's not that attractive...
Well, the boy. It could be the boy, too. It's about getting the picture of the boy. I'm not being...
Your question is, if he or she is not that attractive, but they're a very, very wonderful person, and putting the picture may really give the wrong impression about this person, and when they go on the date, the other party will see that there's so many milas that it's worth it. Is it wise to give a picture?
No.
So you have to use your judgment.
No, I would phrase the question differently, honestly. I would say that to try to be typhus a person by what they look is just a mistake. It's the Instagram generation. It's the Facebook generation, and one of the most beautiful creatures in all of the world is the swan.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had a pet swan, and it was the nastiest creature on a one-to-one basis. If you fed it, it would bite your hand. It was mamish, the opposite of chamor yodei was balav. So I don't see, people. I think that it's really a question. The question is, do we want to grasp you by what you look like, right? And if so, indeed, why do 90% of Hollywood marriages end in divorce?
Right.
Or do we want to say that a person is much more complex, and you could have somebody who's not beautiful at all, who's absolutely, on a personal level, extremely beautiful and attractive, and the question is, what should our approach be, regardless if the girl or the boy is handsome or pretty? What is our zugang?
A fellow comes over to me at a Shabbaton, and he says, Rabbi, I listen to shmooze all the time. Thank you. Here's my problem. What's the problem? My wife is 30 pounds overweight, and I offer all kinds of, diets, and I'll get a personal trainer, everything, and she won't do it. But listen to what he said. The problem is he's a physician, and he works amongst pretty, young, thin nurses, doctors, etc., and it's a real problem. And so what does he do? So I said to this fellow, you have two choices in life. Right now, you either embrace the fact that your wife isn't exactly as you would like her to be and you're happy with it, or be miserable. Because for a woman, if she's overweight and you've offered everything, there's a reason why she's not doing it. Either she doesn't have enough bandwidth right now, the kids are too much, there's enough going on that she's not going to succeed. You offered it to her, that's great. Now you have a choice. You either embrace her as she is and accept it and be happy with it, or be miserable, because those are really your two choices. So even if you got the absolute, the Barbie doll beauty of it doesn't mean when she's 40 she's going to look like that. So I can't agree more with your philosophy, and the approach that it's the totality of the person. And while attraction is very important, but it's important also to understand that Hashem gave you an ability to be attracted to the person who's right for you. And as long as you work on that, you can remain happy with your spouse throughout your marriage.
Now, let me share with you, a guy came to me, and he said that his wife he's not attracted to her anymore. She has, this and that. They have already 6 kids. What should he do? I said, there's a Chaim Seifer in Hilchus in Masechta Sukkah. He says that in the town where he lived, in Preshburg, there was one esrig one year. So the whole village came, 3,000 people, and by the last person it was already all brown. So the people who were at the end of the list came to the Chaim Seifer. They said, it's not fair. We have an esrig that's not Hadar. We should do a lottery next year, who goes first or second. Chaim Seifer says a chiddush. He says if the fleckalach, if the spots are because of the mishmush hamitzvah, it never loses its shame hiddur. So I told this guy, I said, your wife, you said she has, her hands are worn out, her face, how many kids do you have? She's been washing pots, making the beds, putting them on. I said, according to the Chassam Sofer, this mishmush is a din of hiddur. It is still a pre-Eitz Hadar. Right? So I think so one way to look at it is say, yes, I look different, I put on weight, I lost hair, I go to work every day, I go to learn every day, I'm putting in 15-hour days, I take care of my sons, I take care, the stress of earning a living does this to me, the stress. A wife has to look at it and say, Rabbi, according to this Chassam Sofer, these are simanim of hiddur, they're not simanim of... So there's a certain level where it comes out of a robust and a full life, and that is a simon of...
But David, you're saying a mouthful over here, and that is that a person really has a choice. You either learn to be happy with what Hashem gave you, you embrace it and you're happy, or you're miserable. But it's ultimately a choice. And anyone who says, but I can't be happy, it's not good enough, is making one fundamental error. Hashem gave you the ability to be happy with it. And again, whether you couch it in the terms of hiddur mitzvah, and which obviously it is, and it really is, if your wife put on weight because she had 3 kids, 4 kids, 10 kids, whatever it may be, obviously there should be an additional sense of hakaras hatov. But the bottom line is that Hashem wants a couple to be happy and wants you to be happy, but training yourself to keep your eyes where they're supposed to be, training yourself to accept that this is what Hashem wants me to have, and learning to be happy with it. The Shiur used to say over and over, you have to train yourself that what I have is the best. What I have is the best. Meaning my car is the best car in the world. My table, best table, best. Hashem wants it to me, but you have to work on that. It has to be trained. It's not something that just happens.
Happiness is wanting what you have, not having what you want.
Ooh, that's a good line.
Yeah. Okay, should we be using Jewish dating apps instead of shadchanim? Giving the shidduch crisis, should we be say, you got to do whatever you can. If you could use Frumster, you could use. I don't know what else there is. I think J-Date is probably too left-wing for most of our listeners. But should you be using dating apps?
So I think you answered that question earlier, right? That was exactly what you answered with the Twitter generation and the externalization of the experience of life. In other words, meaning to say, if you're satisfied with a surface-level person, then you should use it. If what you want in life is as deep as the skin, that's a good way of going about it. If you're looking for a totality of a person, unfortunately, those apps are not really very, very helpful. Typically, now again, assuming we're dealing with a younger person, there is a time when maybe it is appropriate when a person is really older and has gone, has been through been through things. But in a typical situation, I don't think it's wise.
What about Rabbi Shafier? What about you? We've had on shadchanim who say they charge $10,000 for a shadach, $5,000 for a shadach. You have a girl or a boy, and they can't afford it. So when it comes to the shadchanim, he's 22, she's 19. They say, nobody's returning my call. My father can't afford the $5,000. My father may be a big Ben Tyree, the biggest Talmud Chacham around. He can't afford it. I'm not getting any calls. Can they go to a shidduch? Should they use a shidduch app? Say, listen, person has to make the hishtadlus. This is your hishtadlus, given that the shadchanim are not giving you, any type of bandwidth.
What could I tell you? Can I be facetious? Am I allowed?
Sure.
Maybe they should go to a bar.
So you're that much against dating apps?
Again, for a young person, unless they're it's
I don't know the word. Look, you obviously this is why Gedailah Shimusha Yesim Elimuda. You're saying you do this, and that's what it represents. Is the equivalent of going to a bar, and I accept that. Well, Rabbi Shafier, thank you for sharing your wisdom, and I hope you don't mind that I tried to be, it's a way just to bring out a point. But we thank you for your wisdom and sharing your experience.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hold on a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.